The rise in hate crime and how it can be tackled. We hear from one project in the UK. And how for some people, your profitability does not end with your passing. We examine the earnings of celebrities no longer with us. I'm Martin Stanford. This is Insight. Welcome to Insight. Hate crimes are on the rise across Europe. A United Nations report says that the UK, for instance, has seen a 42% rise in incidents over the last year. Governments across the continent are seeking ways to reverse this trend. The UK is staging a Hate Crime Awareness Week this week. Will it be effective or largely ignored? Insight correspondent Sarah Firth reports.
Multicultural Britain has never looked so divided. Following the Brexit vote, there's been a surge in reported hate crime. It's not just in Britain. Across Europe, there is evidence of growing tensions. Attacks on mosques in Germany. Inflammatory political rhetoric. Threats and abuse.
We had the pig remains being thrown here at the mosque.
Police appealed to find the man in the video in relation to the incident, but have not yet been able to trace him.
It affects people's life. It's changed people's life.
In Britain, statistics have revealed a recent spike in Islamophobic, anti-Semitic and xenophobic assaults over the past year. So what constitutes a hate crime? Hate crimes are any crimes that are targeted at a person because of hostility or prejudice towards that person's disability, race or ethnicity, religion or belief, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. Recent reports by the European Commission against Racism and Intolerance and the UN have both pointed to divisive political rhetoric as one of the instigators to rising tensions. Hope Not Hate work on a grassroots level with divided communities and have noticed the rise since the Brexit referendum in anti-foreigner sentiment.
I think Brexit unleashed something. It certainly during the campaign, it unleashed a lot of division for a small number of people, and I emphasise only a small number of people. It gave them a sense that they had a green light to carry out racial hatred, their deeply held prejudice, to act that out against other people.
In response to the surge of reported hate crime following the Brexit vote, the UK government launched a hate crime action plan. Now that plan includes training and workshops for teachers and young people and funding for security measures at vulnerable faith institutions. The majority of the abuse in Britain since the referendum has been directed at Eastern Europeans and Muslims. And there are many who feel the authorities' response has not been robust enough. Finsbury Park Mosque has seen firsthand the impact of hate crime and casual intolerance.
Verbal abuse, emails, physical abuse. Of course, the police came and it is under investigations, but nobody been caught yet.
Are you happy with the police response to these incidents?
To be honest with you, I'm not satisfied with the result. They trying their best. They taking all the action they supposed to take to capture the perpetrators, but there is no result so far. When it is not about only reporting the incident and that's it. It is about bringing these criminals to justice.
Though government figures have recorded a sharp increase in hate crime, the true scale of the problem may be even higher, with estimates that of the overall hate-motivated crimes reported every year, only a quarter are recorded as such by the police.
How are these types of incidents making the community here feel?
Feel that they've been targeted and they feel vulnerable, and the problem is many of them, especially as I said, women, they feel that they are not safe anymore, and this is why many of them, they stop coming to the mosque. Not just only to the mosque, they stop going to public places like supermarkets, like public transportations. So it affects people's life. It changed people's life.
In post-Brexit Britain and across Europe, the reality is that many communities right now feel isolated and afraid. Sarah Firth reporting for Insight.
Well, to discuss that further, I'm joined by Aman Ali, who's the London Regional Manager for MEND. That's an organisation which focuses on Islamophobia hate crime. And also joining me by a Skype call is Rose Simpkins. She's Chief Executive of Stop Hate UK. Rose, how do you define a hate crime?
Well, it's when you're targeted because of any aspect of your identity. If the action happened because of hostility towards you and your identity, so exactly as was said around race and sexual orientation, faith, gender identity and disability are being the main ones.
Why do you think this phenomenon is on the increase to the measure that it is, not just by single digits, but into 40, 50% increase in incidents?
Well, we have seen a lot of, as you said before, a lot of rhetoric around building up to the referendum and since around, and it has given that green light, as said by Hope Not Hate, to people who think that this is now acceptable. We have to bear in mind that we don't really have a full picture of what goes on with hate crime in the UK, as most people don't report their incidents. So yes, we've had a spike in reporting, and some of that is around increase in incidents, but some of it is also about people's levels of fear, and therefore they feel the need now to report it, or the added pressure to report it, whereas before they felt as though nobody would listen to them, or that it's just something they have to put up with. So we do have to be careful about the numbers of increases, but we are absolutely confident that it's on the increase. Anecdotally, people are telling us all sorts of things that are happening to them on the streets. But the real problem is for us, in terms of understanding and dealing with the problem, is that before and after the referendum, most people are not reporting their incidents. So we don't really know the full picture.
But just to get a clarification on how we determine, how we frame the discussion here. Let me give you a slightly absurd example. Two citizens of the UK might have had an altercation about a parking space at the supermarket. If they were both white, there would be no hate crime element. If one of them is of a mixed race or a different religion, does that then turn into a hate crime? Or is that just a bit of adult nonsense in a supermarket car park?
Well, I suppose, two white people a hate crime can be involved because there's obviously other elements. But in terms of the race, there has to be some words or actions spoken before, during or after that show that there was hostility towards that person because of their race. So you can have any sort of fight, but it's when racist language or racist actions happen that then someone needs to say, I perceive this, or I think this is a hate crime. And it still is down to somebody thinking it is. It isn't just because it happens. Somebody has to say, I think this is a hate crime.
Aman Ali, in your experience, the number of incidents reported to you, the number of people coming to you for help or concerned about things on the rise as well?
Yeah, very much so. The picture has been increasing in terms of reporting, but however, kind of reiterating what Rose was saying, there are still loads of people who have been affected by hate crime who are not coming forward. And we put that down to many factors, one being that they don't feel confident approaching some of the avenues that are currently in existence.
Well, who should they talk to?
Well, the police would be the first port of call, but we're suggesting that...
I mean, the police are so busy, it's not unreasonable to suggest...
Exactly.
And most citizens wouldn't want to bother the police if it was a minor thing. Are you saying they should?
They should, and they should either call 101 as a non-emergency option, but also we're calling for more third-party reporting centres to be available for local communities for them to report hate crimes, whether it be at the local mosque, a local synagogue, or local community centre, somewhere where they feel a bit more comfortable approaching to report an incident of such a particular type. And also, they may feel that they'll receive better victim support as opposed to going to the police centre where you've just kind of highlighted.
Anecdotally, is victim support good or not good?
Well, when it comes to the police force, it doesn't seem to be very up to fit for purpose. A lot of the cases where we found is where...
What, you're characterised as a time waster or somebody who's just making a fuss?
Well, what we've identified is the training hasn't been provided for police constables in order for them to adequately identify the kind of the hate crime itself, and how is it that I can provide support to this victim. So the lack of training has been, I believe, one of the consequences of that.
So how do you address not just dealing with it when it happens? How do you address trying not to have it happen in the first place? Who do you reach to? Who do you talk to?
Well, when it comes to kind of policing our community, there are kind of 2 or 3 main kind of organizations. You have the government, you have your MPs, who you should go to and speak to about the level of hate crime that you're witnessing within your local area, and you want them to do a better job of, in terms of legislation, protecting communities. Now, when you look at the race and religious hate crime that exists, religious communities don't have the same protection as those who are from a race community. So you can get away with verbally abusing someone or using violent and threatening words towards someone of a religious nature, but it wouldn't be the same for the race. So we need to see kind of a greater protection being provided in terms of legislation for communities as well.
So would you say there is now an understanding, or a greater understanding, that racism is a bad thing and one cannot say that or think that because it might be racist? But the same break on human opinions and other way you behave and so on is not placed into faith at the moment?
Well, we can definitely identify that in terms of legislation, it's not there. But in the wider context thing, we have to kind of look at what are the factors that are driving this hate crime in the UK. And one of the things that are often kind of cited is the way the media portrays certain communities. And with especially the Muslim community, we've seen a constant negative stereotyping of the Muslim community. One research showed that for every one piece of kind of a moderate piece on the Muslim community, there are 21 negative pieces on the Muslim community. And these are some of the reasons why hate crime is being fueled in this.
Okay, but that's a very difficult area to get into with the way you've got those statistics from. But are you saying the media in terms of news channels, in terms of the way they might be portrayed in dramas, or
I'm talking about press media in particular here.
The press generally?
In press,
and so news reporting, you feel there are
not
negative
so much news
connotations?
reporting, more so press media in particular.
Okay. Rose, let's bring you in on this, because the question hangs there, how do you address it, and who do you want to lead the way into changing attitudes? How can that be done?
Well, fundamentally, I mean, the law, it needs to be upheld, and when people are breaking the law, the people need to be held to account. But the point was made about where do people go, and the police are extremely busy, and dealing with hate crime is very different from a lot of their other work. So we would argue that they need an intermediary, a third party, independent place for people to go, like Stop Hate UK, where we support people to report their incidents. Many people are coming to us with incidents where there isn't evidence that the police could act on, but we can work with them to help them build that evidence, or to just keep them engaged, because if things happen more than once, then they can become a crime because of harassment or stalking. But sometimes it's very difficult for police. They work on the basis, has it crossed the criminal threshold at this point? And many of them haven't. And so I think it does need a different type of approach. And I'm not letting the police off the hook. But what I'm saying is I think they need to engage more with organisations like ourselves, because they can't do that job.
But we learn, don't we, as
themselves.
youngsters, by example. We learn from our parents, from our teachers. We have things inculcated into us at school. Are there more things that should be done in that arena to try and prevent these kind of exchanges, or this level of emotional dislike of one another occurring at all?
Well, obviously lots of work that can be done in schools, but I always argue that I'm not waiting for that group of people to grow up. What about the majority of people who are beyond school age? And there has to be just a better sort of levels of understanding in our society. Why would you want to target somebody? And lots of people get dragged into kind of being abusive, being rude to people, when it's actually, if they thought about it and thought about the impact, they might deal with things differently. So we do need to do more about understanding that just because you can't target someone because of their sexual orientation if you don't want to be targeted because of your disability, and the other way in race. So I just think it just has to be, this is not something our society will tolerate, and we need to stop being so abusive to each other. And we need to make sure, as I said before, our media and our politicians follow suit, because a lot of people thought the referendum was only around immigration, and they have felt completely free to be offensive and nasty to people on the streets. And there needs to be a strong message that that isn't what it's about, and that this is not to be tolerated. So there's an awful lot of work.
Rose Simpkins, thank you, and Aman Ali, thank you as well. This is Insight. Coming up, making money in the afterlife. Forbes publishes its annual top earnings for dead celebrities.